Do you know what? I try and make these videos from a calm perspective, start off from a calm front, but I'm working with the world's fucking squeakiest chair here, right, which doesn't make things any easier. I want to make a video response to a guy called the Taoist Conservative who has made a video called Atheism is the Religion, glances down at monitor, of the Mediocre Mind. And this is kind of shaping up this month into a proper kind of old school YouTube atheist. I probably shouldn't do that. I'm trying to look like one of the cool kids. Probably look like I've got some kind of mental health issues going on there. But it's shaping into a proper old school YouTube atheist month, so you're just going to have to deal with that if that isn't the kind of material that you like. It's always a cyclical thing. We'll get back to the social issues, to the political issues in due course. I have no doubt about that, but I've really got to respond to this guy's claims of mediocrity of mind and the kind of reasoning that it's based upon. He places his mind above every fucker else's, ladies and gentlemen. He's looking down at us, he says, like a chess grandmaster, examining all the newbie moves that we're making. Not just atheists, he has no more time, 2 minutes 30 to 3 minutes in his video for Christians, Muslims, Jews, etc. either. Right, he must have a strange definition of mediocrity, which means of average quality, because some fucker's got to be above average quality other than just him. Yet it seems that unless you share his particular beliefs, which about 0.001% of the fucking population share, then you've got an average mind. Don't quite know how that works, but I tell you what, let's start working through some of what he says so that he can put it in his own words.
Thus, let me begin. Atheism, the religion of mediocre logic. That is what it is. It is the religion of mediocre logic. Let me start with this. Simple stuff. You believe there is no God. By definition, atheism. You believe there is no God. There you go. You believe. You have a belief. A belief based on nothing. Do you see how mediocre your logic is?
Boom. Mind blown. What the fuck was that all about? That's his opening gambit. I've listened to that now maybe a dozen times or more. I laughed the first couple of times. That kind of, I can't kind of believe the argument laugh. And I kind of settled down a bit now and tried to deconstruct it. The first bit of it, I get. Right. He's heard what atheists have to say, and he doesn't see that as sufficient to justify a belief. But this is how he says it. This is his opening. He says, this is my opening gambit. I've heard what you have to say. You have a belief. I've heard what you've said to justify it. I'm not convinced by it. Can you see where you're going wrong now? No, I can't really. I can't, because I don't regard you as the ultimate arbiter, right, of whether an argument is sufficient justification on which to base a belief. Forgive me, like I've never seen you before in my life. Maybe I'm missing out on something here. But I normally want a little bit more to fucking go on just than one random twat on the internet saying, well, I've evaluated your beliefs and I don't think it's sufficient justification, right? I just cannot believe that he said that and then didn't come back afterwards and think, what a twatish thing to say that is.
Because I have an above mediocre mind, I can look down at the simplicity of the logic, just like looking at a simple chess position where a simple chess player can figure it out, and I can show him the truth of the position that he can't see. It's so simple. If you are an atheist, you are religious. You have a belief that cannot be supported by logic or fact. The belief that there is no God. You've thought about that?
Okay, so let me get this straight then. Because I can't categorically prove there isn't a God, that means that therefore to hold that position that there isn't a God makes it a religion. So, I mean, it's no wonder I've been feeling so fucking tired the the last few years, I hadn't realised I was holding an infinite number of religions. Jesus Christ, you see some Christians and Muslims who take their religion seriously. You see how much effort they put in. No wonder I'm knackered most of the time, because it isn't just God that I don't believe in. There's an infinite number of things that I don't believe in that nevertheless I cannot categorically prove do not exist. I don't believe in goblin slugs. I don't believe in cheese mines on the planet Mars. I don't believe that the Taoist Conservative is a shape-shifting reptoid from the planet Zarg. So all of these things must be religions as well. Well, either all these things are religions as well, or the Taoist Conservative has just pulled that definition straight out of his arsehole, is all that I can say there. Actually, being serious for a moment, I would suggest that it is the latter. This is not how we define a religion. The reason that we regard things like Christianity and Islam are religions are not because they hold a belief in God without sufficient evidence to do so, right? There's other things that are involved.
I got a lot more to say, but that sinks the whole thing as it is. So you're back with the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims. You're just another religious sect called atheism.
See, this I find really, really interesting. I said there are other things that are involved. I'm going to be a little bit rude here, right? But I'm going to say, Taoist Conservative, I think you're a disingenuous prick. And I'll tell you why. It's based on this clip. You've already said in your video, when it suited you, you wanted to define atheism, not theism, in opposition to theism. I note now, when you want to say, well, atheism's a religion because what? What's atheism in opposition to? Theism? Yeah, you didn't mention theism, did you? You didn't say atheism's a religion because theism's a religion. You talked about Islam. You talked about Christianity. You talked about Judaism. Christians, Muslims, Jews are theists, right? But it takes more than just theism for it to become a religion. I know that. You know that, and I know that you know that, because if you didn't, you would have said, well, theism's a religion, therefore atheism is a religion. But that doesn't really serve your point, does it? So I realise what went on there. Right, you want to make this case that atheism is a religion, so you had to make what is actually a logical failure here. So there's only two possibilities here. Either you're not quite as logical as you think you are, right? You're wearing these big boy logic boots and saying atheists aren't logical. I'm just looking down on you all like some fucking chess grandmaster telling you all, well, you've gone wrong. Well, either you've made a bit of a logical fail because you've jumped from atheism being the opposition to theism to atheism being the opposition to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, i.e. to religions, right? Either you've made a logical fail or you're disingenuous. You know that. You know that isn't right, but you've done it anyway because it fits in the narrative that you're trying to spin. I'll leave it to the audience to decide which one.
All right, let me debunk this for you. There is a hubris in that thought. There is an implied arrogance, hubris, that your mind is able to grasp this ingraspable, for many reasons, universe. Yet you, who cannot grasp such things because you are limited by your brain, somehow are convinced, have a belief that there is no God. Do you see how foolish you are? Maybe you don't, because like I said, atheism is the religion of the mediocre mind. You can't be exceptionally smart and be an atheist. You people have a religion based on mediocre logic, man. It's embarrassing for you. It's embarrassing. Atheism is embarrassing. Really is. And it's especially embarrassing because you people who champion thought are revealing just how limited your IQs are, that you can't appreciate. If space and time don't end and there's things that I can't figure out, then wouldn't it be the same about the concept of God? and some concepts of meaning of life? Wouldn't it be on the same level that I can't comprehend?
Well, this is really interesting. This is the meat and drink. This is the bit I wanted to respond to. Would it be the same about the concept of God? Yes, and about the concept of absolutely everything. And this is where I don't understand this approach. I'll be honest, my beliefs and disbeliefs, whether it's to do with God or anything else, are based upon my understanding of the world, right? Such as it appears to me and such as I can work it out. You seem to be critical of that, but I'd have to ask what your beliefs are based upon. You've told me at the start of your video, you make videos on politics, right? Even though I'm sure you would admit you don't know every single political fact. You don't... Political arguments are incredibly, notoriously complex. There has to remain the finite possibility that you're wrong. Nevertheless, you express a belief. I would claim you express a belief based upon your understanding. Nevertheless, you're holding this position here. I don't know everything, therefore anything is possible, therefore you shouldn't hold a belief. I don't know any other situation where we would apply that line of reasoning. What I try and do with regard to this God question, but with regard to any other question, is to look at the improbability of the concept. And this is something that I discussed about 4 years ago now, with reference to a specific example, which I'll give now, because it demonstrates how I think that you can make a pretty reasoned and rational conclusion. It could still be wrong. I mean, that could be wrong here. I think I'm making a YouTube video. I thought I was making a YouTube video a minute ago and I hadn't pressed record. But I mean, I could be wrong because maybe I'm just imagining it all. Maybe you never made your video. Maybe I've gone insane and I'm just smashing away at a keyboard in a padded cell. But we don't rely on that principle. So this is the example I gave 4 years ago. And it starts with a question. Okay. Do you believe that there are herds of elephants roaming the abyssal plain? The abyssal plain, of course, is the deep ocean once you've got off the continental shelf, a mile down there, pitch black, low oxygen, low food, crushing pressures down there. A very inhospitable environment for us, but do you believe there are herds of elephants down there? Bearing in mind that we've only explored a few % of the abyssal plain, by your logic, we shouldn't rule it out, right? We should just keep an open mind and say, I'm not prepared to say either way as to whether there's herds of elephants on the abyssal plain. But of course you would. You would express a disbelief, wouldn't you? Why? Not because we've explored every square mile of the abyssal plain, because we haven't, but because we know what it's like down there and we know the requirements of elephants. Okay, we can't rule out some completely unprecedented species of elephant that is radically different to the elephant species that we know about, right? But that's really, really unlikely as we see it, given what we know about evolution, given what we know about the environments that elephants live in. So I think we can make a reasonable conclusion there based upon these things. And it is the same thing with the God question I propose, because just as we know certain facts about elephants, there are certain facts about God such as they are proposed, and we can have a look at those facts and see how they weigh up with our understanding of the world. One of them is that God is the ultimate in simplicity. He has to be because he's pre-existent, and the thing we need to explain is complexity. So he's the ultimate in simplicity, but he's also perfectly intelligent. Now that, in just the same way as elephants are incompatible as we know them with the abyssal plain, simplicity is incompatible with intelligence as I understand it. That would be unprecedented in exactly the same way. My understanding of intelligence is every example I can see, whether it's intelligence of sentient life, whether it's processing power within computers, is that intelligence requires complexity. Right? If you want a really powerful computer, a single crystal of silicon, just one great big crystal of silicon, isn't going to do the number crunching power that you need. A human's brain needs to be more complex than a slug's brain to have the greater level of intelligence. So the idea that God's brain is entirely simple, but omniscient just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to reject that, and I'm rejecting that in the same way as I would with anything else. You could talk about his omni characteristics. You talk about logic and applying logic, right? Well, we can apply some logic. And omnipotence and omnibenevolence don't appear to be compatible. Omnipotence would mean you could do anything. Omnibenevolence limits you to only the maximally benevolent act in any given circumstance. You can't be both of those things concurrently, can you? If you're omnipotent, then you've got to be capable of doing not just non-maximally benevolent things, but malevolent things. If you're omnibenevolent and only can do, by your very nature, the most benevolent act, then you're quite impotent rather than being omnipotent in many ways. I can do more options. I have more options than a god would under those circumstances. Omniscience appears to be a wholly logically inconsistent characteristic on its face, even without reference to everything else, because we have this idea of Cartesian doubt, global skepticism, Donald Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns, the idea that there's not just things that we don't know, but we don't even know that we don't know them, and there appears to be no logical way of ruling that out. You question me on logic and saying atheists are not being logical, so you're prepared to take on board, in an axiomatic way, logic as we understand it. If I do that, I have to rule out this God concept. You can throw it back to me and say, well, maybe that logic doesn't apply, but you can't do that and concurrently criticize me for being illogical, can you? That wouldn't be logical on your part to do that.
See? Now, so what does that leave you with at least? At least it leaves you with leaving atheism to agnosticism.
So this was where this is leading, and it's another real gripe of mine here, to this agnostic thing. If you don't know, right, you should just call yourself an agnostic. Let's not get into the argument of what agnostic means, and gnosis relates to knowledge and blah, blah, not belief, and all this lot, and the two-axis thing. Couldn't give a crap about that, right? Forget about that. If you want to write that in the comments, write it. I won't read it, because I'm interested in what the Taoist Conservative means when he uses the term, and he's clearly using it in the common usage of the term, which means the don't knows. So why does this wind me up? Because nowhere else, literally nowhere else, would we demand this 100% certitude. He makes the argument here, as it's always made, as if it's just some kind of rigorous, logical point, that unless you have absolute certitude, you should just say don't know. But no, literally nowhere else would you adopt that philosophy. In terms of political opinions, in terms of your relationships and your opinions on people and what they're like, in terms of your beliefs on music or colours or art or anything. There is nothing. In terms of even your evaluation of other forms of science, right, there is nowhere else where you would demand 100% certitude before you stop saying, I'm a don't know. Right, so if that logic is so rigorous and so just, why do you only apply it in this one single circumstance? And do you know the bit that really pisses me off? Is that it isn't even applied symmetrically. It's not just applied to this one question, it's applied to one half of this one question, you know? If you're not certain, if you're not absolutely certain and you can prove deductively that God doesn't exist, you should say that you're a don't know. Right? But what about all the theists? And we've tested this. We've done surveys on this. And the vast majority of theists, including archbishops of Canterbury and the like, including popes and the like, have admitted that they have their doubts. Right? Even these people admit they have their doubts. So what, they should call themselves agnostics as well, should they? No, of course not, because it doesn't apply to that side, does it? Doesn't apply to that side, that's absolutely fine. Just the same rules apply to that side of this question as apply to everything else. It's just one side of this one fucking question that this so-called rigorous logic applies to. It's bollocks. That's what it is. Well, that's the summation of my video. Go and watch the original video so that you can check that I'm not taking anything out of context. You might also want to listen to the meandering spiritual chain tail end of his video as well to hear what he has to say there. Okay, but thank you for watching my video, and bye for now.